Okay, so have you ever like stressed about an economic decision? Like something that felt way too real, you know?
Hmm.
Like choosing between a weekend trip or like finally just tackling that credit card debt that keeps growing.
Right.
We've all been there, right?
Yeah, these everyday dilemmas that really highlight the core of economics.
Hmm.
Scarcity.
Oh, scarcity.
Yeah, we live in a world with like seemingly endless options,
Huh.
right? But the resources we have, time, money, even willpower, those are always finite.
So true. It's so easy to forget about scarcity when you're scrolling online shopping or you see that buy now, pay later button.
Exactly. And that's where economics comes in, understanding how we make choices with these limitations.
Okay.
Recognizing that every choice, even the small ones, has an opportunity cost.
Okay, opportunity cost. See, that's a concept that trips people up.
Yeah.
It's more than just the price tag on something.
It absolutely is.
Okay.
It's what we give up by choosing one path over another.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine for a second you're considering a new job.
Okay.
Higher salary sounds great, but longer hours and a longer commute.
Right.
So that extra income, well, it comes at the cost of your free time,
Yeah.
potentially impacts your health or relationships even.
It's like this hidden equation our brains are trying to solve like all the time,
Yeah.
weighing those visible and invisible costs.
Exactly. And this is where those classic factors of production come in. Land, labor capital, and enterprise.
Okay.
The building blocks of any economic decision.
So it's not just about like our individual choices, but how those then play out on a larger scale using those factors.
Exactly. Let's say a company wants to increase what they're producing. They'll need more land for factories, more people to work the machinery,
Mm-hmm.
additional capital for investments, and that entrepreneurial vision to guide the whole process.
Right.
Each of these factors has its own opportunity cost, right?
Yep.
Influencing company decisions and ultimately impacting the entire economy.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah,
Can you give me an example of how that might play out, like using the production possibility curve?
of course.
Okay.
Let's imagine a country is deciding how to allocate resources
Okay.
between producing, let's say, smartphones and electric vehicles.
Okay.
The production possibility curve shows the max they can produce given their current resources and technology.
Right.
If they focus all on smartphones, they might be missing out on a booming EV market,
Right.
but only focusing on EVs. Could
Mm.
leave them behind in tech.
It's like a balancing act on a tightrope trying to find that sweet spot,
Exactly.
maximize output, and meet those needs.
And that's where understanding utility comes in.
Okay.
It's all about maximizing that satisfaction or benefit we get from our choices.
Given those constraints that we've been talking about.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, utility, we hear that word thrown around a lot.
We do.
Help our listener out. How does it apply to like real world decisions?
Okay, so imagine you're deciding between two apartments.
Okay.
One's closer to work but smaller.
Right.
The other one, more spacious but a longer commute.
Okay.
Now, calculating your utility means considering not just the rent,
Mm-hmm.
but the value you place on that extra space versus time saved commuting.
Right.
What matters more?
Right.
Which brings you a higher level of satisfaction.
So it's like those pros and cons lists, but like a more nuanced understanding of what we value.
Exactly. And here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Sometimes our choices have unintended consequences that affect others not even involved in the transaction.
Okay.
We call these externalities.
Externalities.
Yeah.
Okay, give me a real world scenario where those ripple effects become clear.
Imagine a new factory opens up, creates jobs, and boosts the economy.
Mm-hmm. That's positive.
Positive impact.
Yeah.
But if that factory pollutes the nearby river,
Right.
that negatively affects the health and livelihoods of the people who rely on that river,
Right.
even if they don't work there.
Yeah.
These unintended consequences, both positive and negative,
Mm-hmm.
crucial to consider when making economic decisions.
Externalities, those ripple effects, it makes me think about the big picture, you know, how economic forces play out over time.
Mhm.
It's almost like if we look at history through an economic lens, it can give us some perspective.
Absolutely. History is full of examples of economic booms and busts.
Right.
Each one offers valuable lessons for us today.
Okay.
Take the Great Depression, for example.
Okay. The Great Depression, it's almost become like a cliche now, you know,
Right.
this
Yeah.
warning about the dangers of like unchecked markets.
Yeah.
But what can we as like individuals navigating our own finances,
Right.
what can we actually learn from that period?
The Great Depression reminds us that economic shocks happen,
Okay.
and they can happen.
Right.
We enjoy relative stability
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
but understanding those factors that led to that downturn, over-reliance on credit, a lack of financial safety nets,
Yeah.
that can guide us towards building more resilient personal finances.
So it's about being prepared for those rainy days, even when the sun seems to be shining.
Precisely diversifying your investments, having that emergency fund, and not over-leveraging yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Those are all lessons that we can take from that era.
Okay, so it's about those everyday choices, but informed by a deeper understanding of
Exactly.
how things can shift
Right.
unexpectedly.
Now let's shift gears to the Irish economic crises of the 1950s.
Okay, the 1950s. Now, this isn't a period we hear about as often.
Right.
What happened there?
Imagine a country grappling with high unemployment,
Okay.
limited industrial development, a wave of emigration as people sought better opportunities abroad.
Wow.
This period was marked by economic stagnation.
Yeah.
It's a cautionary tale about fostering a diverse and adaptable economy.
So it's not just about growth just for the sake of growth,
Exactly.
but creating a system that supports a wide range of industries and opportunities for people.
Precisely. The Irish experience highlights the need for policies that encourage innovation,
Okay.
policies that support small businesses and invest in education and infrastructure.
To attract investment and create a more resilient foundation.
Exactly.
It's about those long-term strategies, right?
Yes.
Thinking beyond those immediate ups and downs.
Yeah. And speaking of ups and downs,
Okay.
we can't forget about the Celtic Tiger.
Ah, the Celtic Tiger, Ireland's economic transformation, like
Right.
going from lagging behind to leading the pack.
Exactly.
So what lessons can we take from that period of rapid growth? What might it tell us about navigating today's economy?
The Celtic Tiger, fueled by foreign investment, low corporate taxes, a burgeoning tech sector,
Okay.
offers a compelling case study in the power of targeted policies and global integration.
Wow.
However, it also reminds us that even during times of rapid growth, sustainability is crucial.
So finding that balance between riding the wave of opportunity, but also building in those safeguards
Exactly.
to prevent the boom and bust cycles.
Yeah, the Celtic Tiger eventually succumbed to the dot-com bubble burst in the early 2000s,
Right.
highlighting the importance of diversification, prudent fiscal management,
Okay.
and not becoming overly reliant on a single sector.
Yeah, don't put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Exactly. Think of it as building a house on a solid foundation, not on shifting sands.
Okay, so building on that solid foundation, I think it's time we unpack those different schools of economic thought. Because, after all, understanding those competing perspectives can help us make sense of the economic debates happening, like, every day.
You're absolutely right. Economics isn't one size fits all.
Right.
It's dynamic with various schools of thought. Each one offers a unique lens to view economic phenomena.
So it's less about declaring one right answer and more about understanding the nuances of those different approaches.
Exactly. Let's start with classical economics.
Classical econ.
This school, championed by Adam Smith and his invisible hand theory,
Right.
emphasizes the self-regulating nature of free markets.
So less government intervention, more letting those market forces do their thing.
Essentially, classical economists believe that markets are inherently efficient
Okay.
and that government intervention often creates distortions and inefficiencies. They advocate for free trade, limited regulation, and sound monetary policy.
So creating the conditions for those markets to thrive. But what about those who might get left behind in that system?
That's where other schools of thought like socialism come in.
Okay.
Thinkers like Karl Marx
Right.
offered a stark critique of capitalism, arguing that it inherently leads to inequality and exploitation.
Okay, so a completely different perspective on, like, the very structure of our economic systems.
Absolutely. Socialists believe in collective ownership of resources and the means of production,
Okay.
advocating for a more equitable distribution of wealth and power.
And then there's Keynesian economics, which seems to have gained a lot of traction, especially during times of crisis.
Exactly.
Yeah.
John Maynard Keynes, writing during the Great Depression, challenged that classical view
Okay.
that markets would self-correct. He argued for active government intervention during economic downturns
Okay.
to stimulate demand and boost employment.
So if the economy is like a car that's stalled out, Keynes is saying step on the gas pedal.
Precisely.
Don't just wait for it to start itself.
Keynesian economics emphasizes the importance of fiscal policy, government spending, and taxation to manage those fluctuations
Okay.
and maintain full employment.
So it's like giving the economy a jump start when it's sputtering a little bit.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, like from those little choices we make every day to the grand scheme of economic history and those big schools of thought.
We have.
But then there's this other conversation happening, right? Like one that feels impossible to ignore. Sustainability, can we really strive for economic growth while ensuring like a healthy planet and a just society? Those seem at odds sometimes.
That's the question, isn't it? And it's where economics bumps up against environmental and social concerns in a really complex way. That old model of just focusing on GDP growth is being challenged now.
So it's not just about like going green, then it's a more well-rounded approach to sustainability.
Exactly. Think of it as three pillars holding up a sustainable future:
Okay.
economic, social, and environmental. And they all depend on each other.
Break those pillars down for me. What does that actually look like in practice?
Okay, so economic sustainability.
Yeah.
It's about building an economy that's resilient,
Right.
one that can thrive long-term, not just chasing quick profits, using resources efficiently, promoting innovation, ensuring everyone has a fair shot at economic opportunity.
So not just how much we produce, but how and who benefits from it.
Precisely. Then you've got social sustainability.
Okay.
This is about creating a society where everyone's needs are met.
Okay.
Think access to healthcare, education, decent housing, and reducing those inequalities we see.
Right, because you can have a booming economy, but huge portions of society are struggling.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, a rising tide doesn't lift all boats if some are already underwater.
Exactly. And finally, we have environmental sustainability.
Okay, the big one.
This was probably the most obvious.
Yeah.
Protecting our natural resources, reducing pollution, tackling climate change. It's about making sure future generations inherit a planet that's livable.
So are those 17 sustainable development goals the UN keeps talking about, are those trying to address all of these at the same time?
They are, think of the SDGs as a global to-do list for a more sustainable future.
Okay.
They cover everything from ending poverty and hunger to promoting clean energy and responsible consumption. And the key is they're all interconnected, just like those three pillars.
Give me an example of that. Like, how does that actually work in the real world?
Okay, imagine a company that transitions to renewable energy sources,
Okay.
reduces their environmental footprint.
Yeah.
That's a win for the planet, right?
Yeah.
But it also might create new jobs in the green tech sector,
Creating jobs.
boosting the economy. And if those jobs offer fair wages and good working conditions,
Yeah.
that's social sustainability too.
So it's not about sacrificing one for the other. It's finding those solutions that kind of check all the boxes.
Exactly. And to measure our progress, we use indicators like GDP,
Right, GDP.
but also things like the Human Development Index, or HDI,
Okay.
which factors in things like life expectancy and education levels.
Right, more than just the dollars and cents.
Exactly. And the Gini coefficient, which measures income inequality.
Right, so we can see how evenly prosperity is spread.
Exactly.
You know, it strikes me that this whole idea of sustainability, it requires a real mindset shift.
It does.
It's long-term thinking.
Yeah.
Thinking about those unintended consequences and maybe even challenging some assumptions about progress and prosperity.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about asking those tough questions. What are the true costs of our habits? What kind of world are we leaving behind? And how can our choices get us to where we want to be?
It always comes back to those everyday decisions, doesn't it?
It does.
That choice between two products at the store,
Yeah.
one made ethically and sustainably, maybe even locally, and the other one not so much.
Exactly. Those choices made by millions of us every day, they add up.
They do.
And understanding these economic forces, the history, the different schools of thought,
Right.
it empowers you to make those choices more consciously.
So it's not about having all the answers, but having the tools to ask better questions,
I like that.
to think critically about those trade-offs, and to make choices that we feel good about that contribute to a better future.
Exactly. And at its core, that's what economics is all about.
This deep dive has been enlightening, to say the least.
It has.
Thanks for joining us on this journey through economics and sustainability.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, knowledge is power.
It is.
The more you understand these concepts, the better equipped you'll be to navigate our complex world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for listening, everybody.